Hello everybody, I'm theoliverpickard and welcome to an incredibly cold and crispy Limousin, France. It is absolutely freezing here in France. I've come out for a bit of a walk because I've been doing loads of organisational stuff for the channel, sorting out cool stuff that's coming your way very, very soon. But my brain tends to reject any sort of organisation. I can only sit in front of a computer for so long, and I can only spend so much time kind of sending emails and doing business stuff. So I've come out for a bit of a break and a walk. But I often get distracted when doing this kind of thing. Organisational type stuff by websites like Bring a Trailer and Le Bon Coin and Auto Trader and what's that American one called? I can't remember now. And there's Collecting Cars and all that. There's a million of them, isn't there now? There's a million websites out there that sell cool cars. And they're all very distracting. Like, I go on Twitter and there's cool cars for sale, and I'm on Instagram and there's cool cars for sale. Like, there's cool cars for sale everywhere. It's a brilliant time to be alive, to be honest. Once of a day when I was a little kid, I used to get like Auto Trader once a month or something if I was lucky, and Auto Trader was like this phone book. If you are born in this century and not the last one, Auto Trader didn't used to be a website. It used to be like a phone book, and it had these kind of 10mm square, like 1 centimetre square, little like fuzzy, terribly pixelated pictures of cars and little write-ups about them, and they were all for sale. And before the internets, that's how we used to find cars that were for sale and stuff. I didn't, I was a bit too young then. He says, I've just turned 30, by the way. My birthday the other day. I'm old. It's official. Anyway, so before the internet, it was very easy to kind of get work done and not be distracted, I assume. But now it's easier than ever to find cool cars and cool stuff for sale. And if you are like me at all, you spend long amounts of time looking online at what's going to be the next big thing, what's going to be the next super cool kind of badass thing that breaks into the mainstream as far as classic cars and as far as cool cars are concerned. Very recently there's been a lot of kind of classic Japanese stuff breaking through into the mainstream, and I know there's a small culture of kind of classic Japanese car people out there that have been kind of hardcore fans forever, but it's now becoming much more mainstream. And before that it was kind of air-cooled 911s, old 911s and stuff. And that has me wondering, what is the next big thing? What's the next kind of awesome classic car that's going to be the thing that all the cool kids are driving? What's going to be the next thing that's going to go massive? Is there an unappreciated driver's car out there that everyone else has forgotten, that only a few remember? And it's something I think about. You probably think about it as well, but I think about it far more often than I should. Well, to try and find that, we need to look at kind of what's our criteria. It of course has to be a driver's car. It has to have a community behind it. It has to have parts availability. That's why kind of air-cooled 911s went nuts, because parts are really easy to get hold of. That's why people love VWs, and that's why people love 2CVs and Land Rovers and stuff. But they're already big. They're already cult cars. But what else is there out there? It's like I say, it has to be manual, and it has to be an antidote for our current car climate, our current modern car climate. It has to be something that you can't buy today. It has to be kind of an experience that you can't experience now, and you can't just go to a local whatever dealer and buy one. So what is our modern automotive climate? Well, power is everywhere, isn't it? Everything has a squillion horsepower. Even normal cars have so much power now. I remember, when I was a kid looking at Ferraris and stuff that have 250 horsepower and being like, holy heck, that's all the power in the world. And today there are Honda Accords that make that much power. It's crazy. I remember I wasn't born yet, but when I was a kid, I remember watching old Top Gear episodes when they were talking about the Mark 1 Golf GTI and the fact that it did 0 to 60 in 10 seconds, and that was fast. And today, anything that, people carriers accelerate from 0 to 60 faster than that. Power is everywhere. The McLaren 720. The McLaren 720 is an amazing feat of engineering. It's McLaren's latest and greatest. It's utterly superb, and it is the peak of current automotive achievement, as well as the new Porsche Taycan or Taycan. I'm going to call it the Taycan. Porsche's new electric sports car, and it's been described by many automotive journalisty type people as almost too fast for the road, as has the McLaren. Everything has a squillion horsepower, so that's alright, but everything's also super heavy. Everything's also weighed down with safety equipment. Everything's full of safety gear, and it's just so heavy and weighted. There are no light, nimble sports cars. The closest thing we have to a lightweight, nimble sports car is something like the new Alpine, the new Renault Alpine, the new Alpine A110. And that's alright, but even it weighs a ton. A Mark 1 MX-5 has a lot less power, but it weighs 900 kilos. That's cool, but what about something that weighs a lot less than that? What if we forget power, because power's everywhere? Your daily driver has a squillion horsepower, but you don't need all that power in the world. I mean, look at me. My daily driver, Jolene, has 18 horsepower, and she's rather fun to drive. But that's okay, but it has to be rear-wheel drive, really, doesn't it? Like, a 2CV is fantastic. It's a great adventure vehicle. It's a good, long distance fun car. It's great for kind of summer evenings and that kind of thing, but it's not a sports car. Excuse me. And what we want is a sports car, I think. What we need is the next awesome sports car. So, and just bear with me for a moment, okay? What about pre-war racing cars? What about if, instead of looking forward, accepting more modern stuff as a classic car and kind of looking in the more modern era, because the modern cars are too difficult to repair. It's all plastic and electronics, and when electronics starts to break down, it gets very difficult to restore them and fix them. But what about pre-war stuff? What if we look backwards, right? What is there cool that's pre-war? Pre-war cars are for granddads, aren't they? Well, no, actually. There are some really good bargains to be had in that space of kind of pre-war cars and pre-war sports cars. Cars like the Austin 7. Now, the Austin 7 is quite a dull, cute little runabout. It was one of Britain's first proper mass production cars. It saved Austin, but it also birthed Lotus and gave Jaguar a massive boost. It was BMW's one of BMW's first proper cars. They made it under the name Dixie. Datsun made the Austin 7. But Lotus, why would Lotus bother with the Austin 7? Well, there were loads of them, and they were really cheap, and they could be made very light and very fast. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for driver's cars. So why don't we look in the same place Colin Chapman did? Now, in the 1920s and 1930s, there was a thing called cycle cars, and cycle cars were designed for people who couldn't afford a proper car yet. And these were before kind of the Austin 7. The Austin 7 killed off the cycle cars, really. But the cycle cars gave us the Morgan three-wheeler. And you can buy a Morgan three-wheeler today. But there were loads of cycle car companies that made little tiny motorbike-powered cars. And obviously, as soon as you get two of them, as soon as you have one and your mate has one, you start racing them. And so cycle car racing became hugely popular. Sports car racing was already hugely popular in France, voiturette racing. But there is this massive market of loads of pre-war super cool racing cars, and they are super cool. And they are incredibly affordable. You can buy an Austin 7, what's basically a basis for a racing car, which is, an aluminium body that someone has already put on it. It's already got an engine. It's already street legal. Might not be tuned and modified yet. But I found one, like I said, an aluminium bodied, sports car bodied Austin 7 for £6,000 asking price. £6,000. That's very reasonable for a finished, painted kind of car. And if you're mechanically inclined, you can make that quick. 750cc. Okay, yeah, 750cc. It's not the most power in the world, but they can be tuned very, very easily. And there are companies out there like Pigsy Racing that still make parts for them today. The VSCC, the Vintage Sports Car Club, has massive support for Austin 7s and other pre-war racing cars. And so for anyone that's kind of at all mechanically inclined, it's superb. And these cars are completely manual. These cars are completely... what's the word? They are completely analog. They are as analog as you can get. Speed is not easy to achieve. Speed is something you have to work for. But what if you've got a bit more than Austin 7 money? What if your bank account stretches a little bit further? Well, let's have a comparison test, shall we? So the new 6-cylinder the new 6-cylinder Porsche Cayman and Boxster. I say the Cayman and Boxster because they're now the same car underneath. Just one has a roof and one doesn't. So the new 6-cylinder Cayman, for example, or Boxster, is about $75,000 in a good spec. That's not starting price, but it's also not top spec. So it's a good price for a car that you would actually realistically want to drive. Now, for that same price, I found a lovely Riley Brooklands. I think it's a Brooklands Monaco that is absolutely stunning. Okay, yes, it's not as fast, right? But God, it's pretty. And put the two of them side by side, and there's absolutely no competition, in my opinion, over which one is prettier and which one many people of the opposite sex would prefer to sit in. I would much prefer the pre-war car myself, and I'm sure many ladies and many gentlemen out there would prefer it as well. The Porsche automatic gearbox is a very good gearbox. But the Riley is completely manual. You will have to double D-clutch. You will have to be an incredibly good driver. And anyone who sees you driving anywhere you pull up, everyone is in no doubt that you are an incredible driver. Why? Because there are two sorts of pre-war racing drivers. There are good ones and there are dead ones. Your car has no safety. But that also means that you are an excellent driver. That also means that you have to be an excellent driver. And that gives you something to attain. It gives you something to work towards, is being a better driver, being a safer driver, learning how to use your car. And I think that's kind of what you want that's what I want from a sports car. I want a car that challenges me as a driver. I want a car that I can progress with as a driver. I want a car that makes me smile and makes me laugh, not just at 120 mile an hour, but also that makes me laugh. Okay, a Riley Brooklands Monaco might not do 120 mile an hour, but that doesn't matter, because at 40 it's going to feel like you're doing 120. But it's challenging and interesting to drive at slow speeds as well as high speed. That's what I want from a sports car. Now, you could argue that the Boxster gives you that as well. It will be fun to drive at ordinary car park type speeds. It will be interesting to drive every day. It will be fun to drive every day. But will it be as challenging? They are quite comparable in fuel consumption, which I think is very interesting. When you start looking at them, okay, one will be quite considerably easier mechanically than the other one. Because obviously a new Boxster is, you can have a nice service plan and stuff like that. But there are fantastic specialists out there that cover these more exotic classic cars, pre-war cars, that will be more than happy to help you set up a service plan, and they will tell you what stuff needs and when stuff needs it. So yes, you don't have to go down to your local Porsche garage, but you also don't have to deal with a dealership. You can trust a specialist who's been around, and these cars have been around for so long. You're not going to be hit by recalls. You're well aware what you're getting into, because people have been driving these cars around now for 90 years. And so they know the weaknesses of the vehicle, they know what's involved, and every single component has been, gone over a million times. It's interesting once you start comparing these vehicles how comparable they actually are. And yeah, the Riley's less daily drivable, but a Boxster or a Cayman does have a teeny tiny boot, and so does the Riley, really. In fact, I don't think it has any boot at all. But how cool would you look pulling up anywhere in a Riley? And this is another thing, right? Prestige. The car that you drive says a certain thing about you, I started wearing suits when I was, what age was I? I think I was about 26 when I started wearing suits. I collect vintage suits. The fact that I'm actually building a house at the moment and everything's all packed away means that I don't get them out very often. But if you follow me on Instagram or Twitter, you will know that I often get dressed up and put a suit on. Because when I was younger, I worked in a job that was messy, working on boats and stuff like that. You get oily and you get grubby, and then at the end of the day you clean yourself up. What does this have to do with pre-war cars? I'll get to it. And one day I got dressed up and I put a suit on. And people treat you in a different way. Wearing a suit has a certain level of prestige that no matter how expensive your Yeezys are, those are trainers for those who don't know, how you can spend, I bet you can spend 500 quid on a pair of trainers, right, or whatever, on an incredibly expensive pair of trainers. You could also spend that money on a pair of, for instance, Ducal suit shoes, or a lot less actually. You could probably spend half that amount of money and get a really nice pair of suit shoes. One pair of suit shoes says one thing to the world, the other pair of suit shoes says the other. So if you buy a Boxster, you are driving a really nice pair of trainers, and it will be comfortable. But in a few years, it will be an old pair of trainers, and that pair of trainers will be worth a lot less than it once was. And I know there are trainer collectors and all that stuff, but let's just bear with me, right? But your pair of suit shoes will still be a pair of suit shoes, and your pair of suit shoes will say the exact same thing it said to the world when you first bought it, and that is, I'm a man. Well, hopefully, if you've got good taste, I'm a man or a woman of good taste, and I bought very nice shoes. And when you wear when you wear a suit, people treat you in a different way that they don't treat you when you're wearing trainers. They're just never going to treat you in the same way, you know. It commands a certain level of respect, and for a lot less money than you can buy a base level BMW for, you can buy a Rolls Royce, a pre-war 2025 Rolls Royce. I see them come up on the market for, at one point they were as low as 25 grand. Now, your average family car in America costs $30,000. That's for like a really nice Toyota Corolla, or a mid-level Toyota Corolla or whatever, you know, an Accord or whatever Kia makes now. That's a considerable amount of money. And like I said, at one point, Rolls-Royce 2025s were 25 grand. They've now actually gone up a bit. I think there are some people preempting this video because there is interest in these cars. But now you're talking about 30. So for the same price as you can buy a mid-level Honda Accord or whatever, you can get a Rolls-Royce. And if you pull up to a nice, you know, a business meeting, if you pull up outside your office where you work in a Rolls Royce, people will treat you very differently than if you pull up in a mid-level Kia or a top-level Kia or a base-level BMW or even an old BMW. You know, an old BMW, still an old BMW. But for the same money, okay, the cost of taking care of a vehicle like this is greater. Yes, I will say that. But the more you drive them, the more reliable they are. And there are people who have driven these vehicles around the world. So there is that. You know what I mean? You know, these cars are commonly driven across the old Rolls Royces, I'm talking now, are commonly driven around the planet. Now, old Bentleys are really expensive and you will pay an absolute arm and a leg for an old Bentley, but an old Rolls Royce isn't. And if you pull up outside your office in an old BMW or even a new base level BMW, people are going to think, oh, that guy works in that office. If you pull up outside your office in an old Rolls Royce, in a pre-war 2025 Rolls Royce, people are going to think, oh, that guy owns the company. Talk about dressing for the job you want, not the job you have. And like I said, I'm not suggesting that these cars are drivable every single day, but there are a lot of people out there who say, okay, I have a daily driver, I want something fun, what can I have? You know? And then we all go looking on Le Bon Coin, and we all go looking on prewarcar.com, which is, by the way, prewarcar.com. If you don't know about prewarcar.com, that website will swallow like days of your life. It's awesome. You'll find stuff on there that you never even heard of before. But it's also shocking how cheap some of this stuff is. And it's because, let's face it, a lot of the guys that used to own them aren't around anymore. A lot of the people who were the enthusiasts just aren't here anymore. You know, they've moved on. And so there are quite a lot of these cars about. But there are also some people that are my age, and, you know, some people that are slightly younger than me, and some people that are slightly older than me, that have a huge appreciation for these cars. just like a lot of you and I love, you know, 1960s air-cooled 911s. None of us were around in the 60s. Most of us weren't around in the 60s. Who love these cars. You know, there is no nostalgia for them, but yet we have a love for them. And that's very much my case when it comes to pre-war racing cars and pre-war kind of cool saloon cars. In research for this video, I was checking out some research, procrastination in some whatever you want to call it. But in preparation for this video, I had to, it was very difficult, look at a load of classifieds. And I was looking on one particular website, and there was a Salmson. Now, Salmson on Bentley, but they are still an incredibly cool company. Salmson made radial engines for biplanes and stuff like that in the First World War. And after the First World War, Salmson made cool double overhead cam and overhead cam engines for racing cars and made his own racing cars. Wicked engineer. He was Mr. Salmson. And I was able to find Salmson SD4s for less than 20 grand. And that's like a baby Bentley. It really is. Like overhead cam engine, super cool interior, gorgeous coach work for a song. Like less than 20 grand, that's ridiculous. What modern car can you buy for less than 20 grand? You know, you'd struggle to get a Suzuki Swift for less than 20 grand now. And if you're like me and you like any excuse to get dressed up, it's a very good opportunity to get your nice driving gloves on and get a nice pair of brogues on and some nice driving goggles and a silk scarf and go sliding round country roads. This is the other thing as well, right? If you drive, I don't know. Okay, let's take that Porsche Cayman. If you take that Porsche Cayman and you slid it round a roundabout, you would be a hooligan. If you are driving a 1920s or early 30s sports car and you slid round a roundabout, are you a hooligan? Like, how would those two acts be perceived based on the car you were driving? That's very interesting. Also, the speed at which you would do it would be drastically different also. Like, if you were driving a Fraser Nash, which is chain driven, yes, it's chain driven, 4-speed, like almost like a sequential gearbox, and there's big chains underneath the car that power the back axle, but it doesn't have a differential, so it does excellent skids. If you were driving a Fraser Nash and you slid it round a roundabout, that's just what Fraser Nashes do, and you are a gentleman if you do it. If you do skids publicly in a Porsche Boxster, then you're just a bit of a yob, aren't you? I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but there is a time and a place. Whereas if you do it in your Fraser Nash, you have no choice. That's just how Fraser Nashes go around corners. But I don't know. There's a very different stigma to a very different sort of sports car, isn't there? That's incredibly attractive to me. But am I crazy? Is this something that could wait until millennials learn about pre-war racing cars? Because I don't think any of us have had an education in it. I became fascinated by them through friends and through forum threads and stuff like that. I spent way too much time looking at pre-war racing cars online. But what do you think? Am I crazy? Like, am I completely delusional? Is no one else going to be interested in this stuff? Is this the future of our classic car market? Are people gonna get to a certain point and they're gonna go, well, this stuff's too modern now. You know, the stuff that I liked was the older stuff, and that's all too expensive, and I can't get any of the things that I wanted. So what else is out there? You know, when all the Integra Type R's in the world are all on Bring a Trailer and they're all 100 grand. And an AML car is, you know, 65 or a Riley is 75, or in the research for this video I found an Austin 7 racing car, full-blown race-winning, like championship-winning racing car. The photo for the for sale advert was an Austin 7 with literally like a beautiful racing special in blue, and the bonnet of this car was just covered in trophies. And you can buy a race-winning, championship-winning, road-legal racing car for I think it's 23 grand. Like, how is that not awesome? You know, you can go out and you can buy a race-winning racing car. You know, buying a spec Miata, MX-5, Mazda Unos, whatever thing. Buying an MX-5 Cup car will cost you way more than 25,000. And yet, you can buy a race-winning racing car that's kind of a beautiful driver's car for less than 25 grand? That's madness. And there's a heck of a lot more. You know, if you want something just to tootle around in, I found a beautiful Austin 7 soft top, which is one of, I think, 500 made by factory or something like that. And that was less than 20 grand. Like, there's so much out there. I found an Amel car, not the sports car one, not the CGS, but I found an Amel car Doctor's Coupe for 11 grand. You know, there has to be only a handful of those on the planet, and it's 11 grand. How long until we start looking at stuff and going, ooh, that's attractive? You know, how long until we start looking at hot rods and think, well, people are already doing it, can I drift a hot rod? The answer is, yes, you can drift a hot rod. But when people modernize hot rods, they always look terrible. But when people kind of vintage racing up hot rods, you know, Model A's and Model T's with tube axles and that kind of thing, that looks seriously awesome. And they can handle really well. You know, how long until all you American guys that watch this channel start looking at Ford Model A's and thinking, I can drift that? Don't get me wrong, I love, you know, 1960s Alfa Romeos, I love air-cooled 911s. I also love stuff like Nissan S15s and Toyota A86s and stuff like that. Of course I do. I have this massively wide taste in cars. I'm incredibly eclectic. But this is a video that I really wanted to make because I think that pre-war sports cars and pre-war cars in general are a massively underappreciated at the moment section of the automotive world. And I think that part of that is that, you know, my generation got into classic cars because of computer games, you know, because of way before we could drive, we were playing Gran Turismo, and someone was playing Forza and Need for Speed and stuff like that. You know, Sega Rally, Colin McRae Rally, all those video games. And so a lot of us grew up wanting the cars that were in those games. And I never received an education about pre-war cars, and I never understood that, oh my god, there's these like badass, how the hell is this legal, super awesome racing cars out there, and they're not actually that much money, and oh, look at that, and look at that, and look at that, and here's this thing that I've never heard of before. And you know, that's why I wanted to make this video, because I never had an education on it. And it's weird because my dad was a huge part of my car education. You know, he was a rally driver, he's an engineer. My parents have had well over 100 cars between them, and possibly each. And my dad had never heard of these cars either, and now like one of my dad's dream cars is an Amel car, a CGSS, you know. Amel car C6s are gorgeous, but they're a lot of money. Anyway, what I'm saying is that I never knew these cars existed. So if I never knew these cars existed, and I'm like a giant automotive nerd. I didn't know these cars existed until a few years ago. If I didn't know, there's a lot more people of my age that don't know. I'd say the majority of people my age don't know. And that's why I wanted to make this video, because even though it's not my usual kind of video, there are sometimes I get ideas for videos and stuff, and I don't have a podcast or anything like that, so I don't really have a way of having a conversation with you guys and asking you guys what you think. But this is a video that I've wanted to make for a little while, and something that I really wanted to get off my chest. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please tell me what you think down in the comments below. Am I crazy? Am I not crazy? Is it the future? Is it too niche? Is it, I don't know. What do you think? Please tell me down in the comments below. If you want to see more videos like this, please click subscribe. It massively helps this channel. I've got so much cool stuff planned for the year ahead. Like I said in the beginning of this video, there is so much cool stuff coming. In fact, I have a trip planned for next month that is the biggest thing I have ever done in my YouTube career. It's huge for me. It's something that I'm going to tell you about next week. But it's massive. And we're going to have more cool cars, we're going to have more of everything. So if you want that, please make sure you subscribe down below. Please be awesome to each other. Click like if you liked it. Like I say, it helps me massively. I want to do not necessarily this, but I want to make videos for a living. I love doing it. So if you want to support me in doing that, please make sure you subscribe. Please click like. Please share these videos with your friends. And please be awesome to each other. And I'll see you all in the next video. Bye bye. Can I reach it?